Design911.com Porsche Championship kicks off at Silverstone this weekend, a great low-cost series.
We gave me the opportunity to drive a Porsche Boxster at the beginning of last year when they were launched, and it was so much fun. It's, completely addictive, and it reminded me that racing is about the racing and not about the amount you spend. It seems now that the less we spend, the more we enjoy it.
You talk about how much you spend. How much does this cost?
Well, the cars are really good value. The 924s that are in their 20th year can be bought for £3,000 ready to race. A good Boxster, £20,000. I'm now spending a couple of grand a weekend, not 20. So it really is a completely different league, but with all the same, fantastic close racing.
Race 1 at Silverstone's national circuit produced plenty of drama. Clark started on pole position. Opposition early on, though, came from Stephen Warburton, who qualified alongside him. Jerry Taylor had in the pack as they went round back into the third place. Behind him, though, there was a big sideways moment for Mike Seller. The championship runs in two classes. The Boxsters, which were battling furiously for second place, and behind them, the slower, older 924s. The fight for second place raged on. Jerry Taylor in 16 ahead of Stephen Warburton. With Taylor up to second, so Taylor's Foundry Motorsport 1-2. His team preparing the car that was leading in the hands of Dave Clark. Lower down the pack, Mike Seller was pretty busy trying to fend off the challenge of David Bierman. The two of them ran nose to tail through Copse Corner, up towards Maggots. Bierman looking for a way through on the inside. Eventually he made the move and was able to swoop through on the outside, heading into Beckett's. The 924s, though, were having plenty of fun. Mark McKenzie, the hotel chain owner, having a couple of spins. He was able to rejoin. As elsewhere in the 924 fight, Stephen Brown, the engineer, runner-up in the championship last year, was desperately trying to gain places. He did, he moved himself up the order, but sadly was a retirement before the end of the race. The Boxsters were soon in and among the traffic, working their way past the slower 924s. Warburton in third spot, doing his level best to stay on terms with the race leaders. There's another of the Boxsters in strife at Copse was that of Dave Hughes, the man who was third in last year's championship. He pointed himself in the right direction and rejoined, and would finish in ninth spot. Up front, Dave Clark was untouchable. He ran out an easy winner, nearly 7 seconds clear of everybody else. Jerry Taylor making it a Taylor's Foundry Motorsport 1-2 in second spot, and Stephen Warburton coming home in third. Jason Flagg was on target to win in the 924s, but the battle for second went right down to the wire. Andrew Hannington was just ahead of Alfred Pleisinger, but he was able to wriggle away by in the last couple of corners, and the former Indonesian touring car racer squeezed through for second place. The gap between them at the end of the race being just a tenth of a second. So Dave Clark able to celebrate victory in round 1 of the championship. Jerry Taylor coming home behind him. Stephen Warburton third, and then Richard Styron, former Volkswagen Racing Cup racer, fourth ahead of the Biermans. David ahead of John. In the 924 fight, Jason Flagg the victor there. And Flagg, having raced years ago with the HSCC, now very much a man to beat in 924 racing. Pleisinger second ahead of Hannington, with Adam Croft, Sean Siddall and Paul Bravo rounding out the top 6. The cars making their way to the grid then for the second race this weekend here at Silverstone in the Design911.com Porsche Championship. And it's Dave Clark who's going to line up on pole position. Jerry Taylor with him at the front of the grid. And then Stephen Warburton and Richard Styron on the second row. It's going to be a big fight between the top 4 on the grid. But Dave Clark, very much the man to beat. Last year's champion. And the 41-year-old who began in Caterham racing many seasons ago has always been quick in sports cars, Caterhams or even in GT cars. He had a spell briefly in things like Lister Storms and in Chrysler Vipers. There on the second row, Stephen Warburton, another vastly experienced driver, Formula First champion going back many years. And also a man to watch, Richard Styron, former kart racer, came back a couple of seasons ago in the Volkswagen Racing Cup, went well, fell away from that last season, and has come into sports car racing instead. So up towards the end of the green flag lap, Dave Clark weaving around there, trying to put a bit of warmth into the tyres. Jerry Taylor, then Stephen Warburton, you see Richard Styron is next up, and then the third row of the grid, David and John Bierman. The fourth row, number 40, Arjo Josh and the yellow car, the Mike Seller. And then behind them, you've got the Porsche 924s, with Jason Flagg being the best of them on the grid. And as they make their way up towards the grid, everybody starts together. Two classes, you've got the Boxsters as well as the 924s, but it's a combined race, so everybody goes from the grid at the same time. And as the field forms up then now, pole position, Dave Clark on the outside of the circuit for this race, the proper pole position on the Silverstone National Circuit. Jerry Taylor alongside him. Jerry Taylor, the former cycle racer, definitely a man to watch, having been quick in Caterhams and GT cars a few years back. Hasn't raced for a few seasons until last year when he was tempted back by the BRSCC's Porsche Championship. Nice full grid as well. The 924s, of course, you can trace back to 1978 when they had their very first one-mate championship. That rather fizzled out, and it was picked up in the early 90s by the late Jeff May, run as a very successful one-mate series for many years. And although the numbers have dwindled a little bit, they found a happy home combined with the Boxsters, and it's good to see more and more of the new shape Porsches coming out every season. So we're ready to go racing then. Grid forms, and the race is going to be over 20 minutes. Clark in the white car, Taylor in the red and white alongside him, Warburton's orange and black boxed behind. Lights go red. When the lights go out, the race, round 2 of the championship, will get underway. Engine notes rising then as the drivers look towards the lighting gantry. Who is going to make the best start then? Dave Clark looking to try to make it a double here at Silverstone this weekend. Now the lights go red finally, and the lights go out, and Clark makes a very good start indeed from the outside of the front row, and he's got to make a good start from there because it's not the best line to be on. Heading down towards Copse Corner, Clark swoops across, takes the line then. In second spot behind him is Jerry Taylor. Richard Styron goes third as the cars turn their way through Copse then for the first time. 18, Alfred Piesinger there goes through, and the company CEO, former Indonesian touring car racer, desperate to try and get a class win this time, but it's Clark who leads outright. Taylor second as they go to Beckett's for the first time. Styron third, and Warburton a bit slower out of the blocks, looking for a way past him as they head down towards Brooklands for the first time. Very wide indeed there goes Jason Flagg in his 924. Flagg having been victorious within the class in the first race, and now as they steam their way down towards Brooklands for the first time, you can see the way that Warburton is looking for a way there to try and move himself up into third spot, but Richard Styron is keeping him at bay for the moment. Wide over the curve goes Styron. Warburton tries for a gap on the inside. Stephen, an instructor at Silverstone, knows every inch of this circuit. He should know every possible overtaking place as well. Out of Brooklands they come through Luffield. This is David Bierman's view. You can see the fight going on ahead of him. Bierman accelerates through Woodcote, grabs a gear, and goes down towards Copse Corner now. As up front, Dave Clark is just edging away a little bit. Jerry Taylor second, but then look at the fight that's going on for third place now. You've got there Richard Styron defending from Stephen Warburton, and as they turn their way through Copse, there's another good battle building up here, look. Number 40 is Arjo Josh, Dave Hughes behind him, and Hughes was somebody who had a spin at Copse in the first race, but he's keeping out of trouble now. Mike Seller there in the yellow car, also working his way up towards Beckett. Through the hairpin they go, and then down towards Brooklands. But up front, Dave Clark is trying to build the lead, and very, very wide there, heading towards the curb, rattling over them. That's John Bierman. The fund manager gets back onto the circuit, albeit he will have lost a little bit of time as a consequence of that. Here's the fight then between Warburton and right on his tail there, Richard Styron. So we've had that change for third place, in other words. Warburton has gone through. Stephen Warburton down towards Brooklands, uses a bit of the curb on the inside there. Styron back to fourth now and trying to play catch-up once again. Richard Styron very quick in karts a few years ago before he came back into racing in the Volkswagen Racing Cup, and then now into the Porsche Boxster class here on board with Bierman. Making his way up towards the line. He's losing touch just ever so slightly with that pack ahead is David Bierman. Grabs a gear, goes through Woodcote, down towards Copse now. There Dave Clark turns his way then through Copse. Jerry Taylor is staying with him. Dave Clark not getting away for the moment. And so Clark, the reigning champion, hangs on to the lead, but only just as they're going through. Number 31, John Bierman, the former MGF racer, back in racing after a few years away, and he's pretty busy at the moment, trying to attack and defend at the same time. Clark versus Taylor then, the two teammates in the Taylor's Foundry Motorsport run cars out of Beckett's. Great noise these Boxsters make as well as they accelerate now down towards Brooklands. In third place, Stephen Warburton, and it's good to see desirable cars like this being able to be run at club level. Down they come into Brooklands. Good to see more and more of the Boxsters coming into this championship every year. More and more drivers realising that you can take a desirable sports car and race it cheaply. Off the road there, though, in his 924 is Andrew Hannington. He's gone way off at Beckett, turns the car around, finds the correct part of Silverstone. It can be a bit baffling if you go off now because there's so much extra tarmac around. Here's the replay, just locks up going into Beckett, goes straight on through the gravel, over the grass, takes his foot off the brake, aims for the tarmac, finds a bit of traction in the end, turns the car around. It could have been a big, big moment for Andrew Hannington. He's way off the circuit, but will get back on and should be able to work his way up a few places before the very end. Leaders come across the line. Clark versus Taylor then, but that gap is not really extending, as meantime in the 924 battle here, you can see the way that Mark Marshall is coming under pressure from number 10, and that's Mark McKenzie, the hotel chain owner, goes a little bit wide, and he in turn now has got Stephen Brown, the engineer, the runner-up in last year's 924 contest, right up behind him, and Brown goes wide, coming out of Luffield. Rattles his way over the curb, and now they sprint their way down towards Copse Corner. The 924s may not be as quick as the Boxsters, they may not be quite as young, but they still deliver very good racing. There are plenty of them around, there are loads of spare parts available for them as well, so they're a very good, cheap way of going motor racing now. Car number 10 then, Mark McKenzie, turns out of Copse, but right up behind him here, look, is Steve Brown, and Brown tries to make a move, going up towards Maggots. He's going to be on the outside there, but that, if he can stand his ground, will be the inside for Beckett. Does it work? Does it work? No, it doesn't. Has to slot back in behind. McKenzie moves across, takes the line for the corner. And ahead of the pair of them here, still number 2, Mark Marshall, going well. Steve Brown up a gear as he comes out of Beckett, and he gets a good run out of the corner there. See the bit of tubing on the left-hand side to get a bit more air into the cabin. He's up alongside, and this time he should gain a place. Yes, he does. He's gone ahead now. Mark McKenzie, down they come towards Brooklands, and that finally moves Steve Brown up one further spot. Out of Brooklands towards Luffield then, a pair of them running together. Steve Brown, the 36-year-old engineer, former 100cc kart racer a few years ago, then he moved across into 924s, runner-up in the championship last year. Mark McKenzie, only his second season of racing, having begun last year, and the hotelier having dropped back behind the Flagg transport car, the company run by really the man to beat in the 924s, Jason Flagg, who's way out up front. Diving down towards Copse Corner they go. There you can see is number 60. Steve Brown accelerates his way now up through Copse Corner. Up to top gear, heads into the left-hand of Maggots, and he's starting to reduce this gap all the time. Look, there's another battle developing, just as there is in the boxers, because in this race, Dave Clark is not shaking off Jerry Taylor. The two immaculately presented cars coming across the line almost together now, and there's another boxer in grief at Brooklands. Number 40 has gone off the road there, that's Arja Josh. And Josh should be able to rejoin, but I think he stalled the engine. He's obviously had a drama, gone off the road, probably a spin by the look of where he's come to rest. He's trying to get the car fired up. When he does, he'll be able to rejoin. He does now, and slowly down the pit lane, I'm afraid to say, comes 22, Andrew Hannington. We saw him going way, way wide at Beckett's a few laps ago, and the former Volkswagen Vento racer into the pit lane. He raced in the original incarnation of the Porsche Championships in Great Britain back in the 1980s, had a few years away, went Vento racing, had many years away, and has come back into this series as now Stephen Warburton is desperately trying to catch the two ahead of him. Down he comes now towards Brooklands. Great shot this, as you can see Jerry Taylor making his way up on the inside of the traffic. Dave Clark still ahead of him, the two race leaders working their way past the slower 924s, motoring journalist Rebecca Jackson and also Paul Bravo being the first ones to be lapped. Nose to tail they come.